they used to live in the beginnings, like a houseboat. No, without any heating, without any water. Just very rustic or rough condition. Can I give it to you this, and you pass it down? You have a look. They've been living like that for about 100 years, just like that, like this. And after 100 years to live just in that conditions, some of them got the idea. The humans, we always inventive. Yes. We always ambitious, we try to go ahead, We never are happy with the things we have. And then they start to do reed islands, as the one we are in a moment, as this one. And when they start to do reed islands, floating islands, without know, they took the ancestral and original way of living of the real Urus. Now, maybe I'm disappointing you because you did yesterday 10 hours, 11 hours by train just to see the reed people. But to be honest, we don't think these people are Urus anymore. The real Urus probably used to speak another language first. And according to the legends, mainly legends because we don't have any records, they get extinct maybe 1,000 years ago.
Go it that way?
No.
So sorry to disappoint you, but you know what is the most important? These people live here, and they represent a unique way of living. I know in some places in the world we have people living in not similar conditions, but in the water, but they live in sticks. In Cambodia, they live in boats. In the Lake Titicaca, they're still doing these boats. But this is a copy of the traditional boat, like that. They were very shy, very shy. Well, friends, I would like to know if you have any questions. And especially, I would like to know if so far you're convinced that this is real. Because, to be honest,
I have a question. That particular boat that you show us, it looks very much like the Vikings or the Egyptians.
Yeah. There are a lot of similarity, but we don't know how because we're talking about completely different times. Or maybe, I don't know, it's hard to tell you that because unfortunately there's no writings. We don't know where the people come from, where the Incas come from. If we don't know where the Incas come from, less we will know where the Urus come from. We're talking about the Incas just 500 years ago. But we know that the area started to have people living on already maybe 10,000 years before Christ.
Yeah.
So a long time, but we don't, unfortunately, we are involved in mystery.
Yes.
We don't know much things about our ancestors.
Uh-huh.
Well, friends, unfortunately, it's hard to tell you, why there's some similarity. Anyway, I have to tell you something.
Milk.
The last times, they're making boats like this, with like Vikings, but for them, it is representing a puma. A puma with a cormorant tail, Cormorant, you know what's cormorant?
Yeah, I noticed that, yes.
It's a puma face, or I don't know, looks like a puma cat or something like. But they're not representing probably what the Egyptians used to represent.
Yes.
The people are mainly attached to the things they have around the puma, the snake, the animals. So people still being animistic in this area. So this boat, for example, looks like a what? What can be that? For me, look at, I know it's for a parrot or something like that. But in their opinion, that's a puma. If we say it's a puma, we have to say it's a puma. What's the problem?
That's right, yes.
Well, we're going to do something now. These ladies...
When I'm looking at that boat there, it resembles so much the Egyptian and the Vikings. It's just incredible. ¿Con qué? ¿Esa la cabeza del cóndor y el puma?
Sí.
Ah, sí. So that's the head of the condor on the boat. And this one is the head of the puma. And that's the back of it, the tail bit. Okay, so let's have a look at what Graham Hancock has to say regarding this culture in Lake Titicaca.
And here we're on the island of Suriqui in Bolivia, on Lake Titicaca, looking at a traditional method of boat design. It's one of the few places on Lake Titicaca where these boats are still built, these reed boats with high curving prows. And according to local tradition, the design of these boats was brought to the Andes by the gods, by the Viracochas, as they were called, gods who were remembered as being tall and pale-skinned and bearded, who'd come from across the sea to South America in a time of turmoil and darkness after a great catastrophe, and who had brought with them this kind of boat design and many, many other skills, advanced skills of civilization. I'd like to compare this high-prowed boat with this design from ancient Egypt, the so-called solar boat of Khufu, which was found buried beside the Great Pyramid of Egypt, off the southern face. It's much bigger than the boats on the Andes, but the design is eerily similar. And this design has been studied by marine experts, and what they've concluded is rather interesting. They conclude that although the materials used both in the Egyptian boats and in the Andean boats are not suitable for sailing on the open seas, the design that is incorporated in these boats could only have been evolved by a people with a long and solid tradition of oceanic navigation, people who needed boats that could cut through high waves and breakers. And the suggestion is, could this design be a very ancient legacy that was passed down and received both by the Egyptians and by the peoples of the Andes and expressed in the kind of boats that they made. In both areas, such boats are associated with the gods. The ancient Egyptians called their gods the Niteru, and they said that they had come from a land far away to the south, a land called Ta-Niteru, across vast expanses of ocean. So whoever they may have been, these gods, above all else, were navigators and seafarers. And navigators and seafarers need maps if they're going to sail around the earth. Now this map is a modern map, and I picked it up at the Library of Congress in the United States. It's an azimuthal equidistant projection centered near Cairo. And in common with all modern maps, it incorporates a number of advanced features. It incorporates highly accurate longitudes, and particularly relative longitudes. And it incorporates an advanced map projection. It isn't easy to represent a spherical object, the Earth, on a flat piece of paper, and to do so with a considerable degree of accuracy. And this is a problem that cartography has had to overcome. So we find good map projections which require advanced mathematics and good relative longitudes. Interestingly enough, there's a category of ancient map which also shows these modern features and which doesn't fit with the received view of the development of human history. One of the most famous of these maps is the Piri-Reis map. And I'm showing it here because I want to compare the projection of this map with the projection here centered on Cairo. Notice the west coast of Africa and the east coast of South America, and coming down here to the Antarctic Peninsula, tonguing up towards the south of South America. It's that precise projection that we find on this 1513 map. Again, there's the west coast of Africa, the east coast of South America. And coming down here, we find a representation of the northern Antarctic Peninsula. In 1513, when Piri-Reis drew the map, Antarctica had not been discovered. In fact, it wasn't discovered until 1818 by our civilization. So there immediately is one anomaly on this map. And another anomaly is the mathematics used in the map projection. And a third anomaly is that it incorporates highly accurate relative longitudes. To do longitudes accurately on maps requires a chronometer, a marine chronometer that will keep accurate time at sea. And again, this was something that our civilization couldn't do until the late 18th century. So this map, fragmentary though it is, appears to incorporate many features that are not supposed to have been known about in 1513. Piri Reis explains why in these texts that he wrote on the map. He was a Turkish admiral, and he wrote these texts on the map. And what they say is that the map is not his own work. It's a work of synthesis. It's based on more than 20 earlier source maps, that he put all these maps together and derived his own map from these. And unfortunately, the source maps that Piri Reis used have not survived. Is it possible that the advanced features of this map originate in those lost source maps, which Piri Reis told us went back in some cases to before the time of Christ and had come from the long-lost library of Alexandria in Egypt? Another strange thing about the appearance of Antarctica on this map, it's been studied by US Air Force cartographers, and their view is that what we're actually seeing there is the subglacial topography of Antarctica. Antarctica as it looks underneath the ice that now covers it. And this raises the question, how long has Antarctica been covered with the 2-mile thick ice cap that we now presently see on it? Such questions would be irrelevant if there were no other maps in this category. If the Piri Reis map stood alone, the most sensible thing to do would be to dismiss it as a coincidence. But it doesn't stand alone. There's hundreds of other maps that incorporate this same information at a time when our civilization had not yet acquired that information. This is the Mercator map. Mercator is rather famous for his Mercator projection that still dominates most atlases today. It's a 16th century map, and it shows Antarctica 300 years before Antarctica was discovered. And again, it's based on earlier source maps, and again, it incorporates accurate relative longitudes. So also the Orontius Phineas map that we're looking at here, another 16th century map. Mercator includes it in one of his atlases. And here we see Antarctica looking a little bit different, with mountains clearly visible along the coast and rivers running down from those mountains in places where great glaciers are known to run today. It looks on this map as though Antarctica is partially deglaciated. The center of the continent appears to be featureless and ice-covered, but the coast is showing these unglaciated features. What might that mean? This is a map by Philippe Bouache, an 18th century geographer, still a good 100 years before the discovery of Antarctica. And it shows the continent as a kind of archipelago, 2 major land masses divided by a clear waterway running between them. I wonder where he got that idea from. There's a redrawing of the Mercator map and the Orontius Phineas map and the Bouache map. And here to the right, based on seismic surveys conducted in International Geophysical Year in 1958, is a view of what Antarctica actually looks like underneath all that ice that now covers it. We're looking at the subglacial landscape of Antarctica here. And while I wouldn't claim for a moment that the Bouache map is a perfectly accurate representation of the subglacial topography of Antarctica, I think it's much too close to the reality to be dismissed entirely. I think that much more research needs to be done into these anomalous early maps and into the source maps that they rely upon for their information, because we just may be looking at the faint fingerprints of a lost civilization, of a navigating, seafaring civilization that explored and mapped the entire globe long before what we call history began.